The Illinois House passed a measure yesterday labeled as a bill for the Department of Children and Family Services, but hours before they passed it, they amended it to be a bill about election law. And that's stirred up some frustration from minority Republicans with all kinds of challenges that they say this brings to the state's fair elections. Welcome back, Bishop on Air. My full-time capacity has me at the Center Square, and you can find our work at thecentersquare.com. Track what's going on at the Illinois Statehouse, all kinds of things happening. So we're going to go through some of that here this segment. So I greatly appreciate you guys joining me if you want to stay up to date with what's going on at the State House. So, the headline is Democrats replace child welfare bill with changes to election law. And what's going on here? You have a Senate bill that already passed the Senate that is up in the House. The House brings about an amendment which guts and replaces the bill, and the bill is Senate Bill 2412. Senate Bill 2412. But in the House, State Representative Jay Hoffman had it, and he said that it does three things. It places 3 non-binding referendums on the general election ballot, eliminates the slating process to place candidates on the ballot in certain circumstances, and moves up petition deadlines by 28 days. With regard to the slating process, currently a party can slate an individual 75 days after the primary, even if that candidate didn't file for the petitions for the primary election or did not conduct a write-in campaign at the primary election. This bill would remove that ability of a legislative or representative committee to nominate candidates to state representative or state senate. So, we talked about the primary election, right? More than half of the state house seats, the party was already determined. There were Democrat districts where there were no Republican candidates in the primary. There were Republican districts where there were no Democrat candidates in the primary. Democrats have the supermajority in both chambers of the Illinois General Assembly, and this measure would essentially say that if Republicans didn't run somebody during the primary in that Democrat district, then they cannot slate somebody heading into November. So this measure, again, it was about Department of Children and Family Services, child welfare, and then they had a quick committee hearing, dropped an amendment in there, and then they went to go pass it. But Republicans not happy one bit. They actually walked off of the House floor after voting present for the bill and held a news conference down the stairs at the Capitol. And this is from our colleagues at BlueRoomStream.com who shared this on their social media. And let me make sure that we've got some audio here. Give me 2 seconds. Double check, make sure that tab is muted. And it is muted. So live to tape, folks. It's how we do it here so we can get you the latest up to date every morning. So let's rock and roll. Here is House Minority Leader Tony McCombie.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We really appreciate it. The House Republicans are standing here united in after a present protest vote on the House floor today. This is another bill. Here we are, beginning of May, and a bill that just dropped on us at the last minute with no transparency or opportunity for our residents to weigh in. This morning, the amendment was filed out of the blue on a Senate bill. It was assigned to the House Executive Committee for a hearing shortly thereafter, and just a few hours later, it was brought forward for a vote on the House floor. Serious legislators should want to give time to the public to understand the impact on our state. We're used to seeing this kind of maneuvering on May 31st, but we don't understand the sense of urgency right now, unless the end goal is to stifle the democratic process through the changes on slating candidates. We are united on providing checks and balances in the much-needed state government. The problem this bill purports to solve could be helped anytime by legitimate legislation that has been brought forward by members of the House, vetted by members of the House, and with our constituents' input. We are for building families. We are for protecting election workers, and we are certainly for property tax relief. But there is something else that we stand for, and that is democracy. This bill takes away the opportunity for us to work together with our counterparts on any number of substantial challenges facing our state. There has been ample time for tax relief. We need to provide families with that relief. But instead, here we are at the beginning of May playing games.
So again, that's House Minority Leader Tony McCombie, the leading Republican in the Illinois House, talking about the last-minute change to a bill before the House passed a Senate bill. Now, this has to go back to the Senate for concurrence, and they already held a Senate hearing about this amendment, so I imagine it could come up as early as today, possibly. But this raises questions about that 3 readings rule, right, where you have to have 3 readings of a piece of legislation in each chamber before it ultimately passes on to the governor. The governor does have an event today in Bloomington Normal, I believe, where he's going to be taking some questions. We'll see what he has to say in response if this comes up, because this is substantial. But, the State House in action. They've got a May 31st deadline to pass a budget, and Governor Pritzker earlier this week talked about the budget process, a story you can find at thecentersquare.com. The headline, you've got the budget back and forth being how are the tax dollars going to be spent. $52.7 billion, the largest state budget proposed by Governor J.B. Pritzker. And here's what he has to say about the expected revenues.
I feel pretty good about where we are. So I think that the big question is just about the General Assembly and spending. I think everybody understands, though, this is not, people have made more of what I said in the State of the State than I think is appropriate. It's a tight year, but this is not like, it's not like we're running a massive deficit and we need to, panic about how we're going to balance the budget. I proposed a balanced budget. It's totally reasonable. It really only has one tax adjustment, actually 2 tax adjustments, but 1 new or additional tax, and that was the change from 15 to 35% on those who take sports betting. Not on sports bettors, to be clear, because that's been misreported, but rather on the companies that take sports bets, which is not inappropriate because there are lots of states that are have even bigger, they're among the top states that take sports betting that charge a higher tax than we're even proposing.
But there's also, proposals that he made in his State of the State and budget address in February that are going to impact retailers when it comes to the credit they receive for being the sales tax collector. But Republican State Senator Don DeWitt pushing back on the idea that the budget's balanced.
If you take it on face value, based on the projected expenditures that he submitted in February, and combine that with $1 billion of tax increases that he proposed as part of the same budget, technically on paper it appears to be balanced. But A, that depends on whether the legislature gives him all of the spending he asked for, and B, is the legislature willing to give him that $1 billion worth of additional revenues that he's asking for. It is not a coincidence.
So, again, you've got the question of what exactly is the legislature going to do when it comes to passing this budget and incorporating possible new revenue streams like $1 billion that the governor is proposing here that would impact not just sports betting companies, but also it would impact businesses, retailers, and then you've got the grocery tax that the governor wants to zero out statewide, which is going to impact local municipalities. And he seems to be wanting to just say, hey, municipalities, if you want to increase that tax, go right ahead. It's not going to be a tax statewide. So interesting to see all of that. But the governor did seem cold on the idea of bringing about any kind of tax on services. Because Illinois, if you talk to some of those nonpartisan tax groups from across the country, they say Illinois has a couple of good things. One being the flat income tax. 2, the state does not tax services. So the governor, he doesn't have he doesn't seem to be wanting to go that direction when he was asked about that. But yesterday, another big issue that's expected to pop at some point before the end of the month. Again, May 31st is the deadline for them to have a budget passed with a simple majority for the budget that starts July 1st. Are we going to see anything happening with the Bears? Apparently there was a meeting yesterday with the governor at a Retail Merchants and Manufacturers Association event in Springfield. He was asked why he wasn't at the meeting with the Bears.
Skip,
I didn't skip anything. I just have a busy schedule. That's all. Right now we're just getting a lot of technical information from them. I think the presentation of all the photos, the drawings, et cetera, are behind us. Now we're just talking about numbers.
So again, he says he didn't skip it, but he did say, he watched and saw the reporting that there was about the Big Bears announcement to get tax subsidies of some kind in the effort of a new domed stadium complex on the lakefront in Chicago.
I think they're doing a fine job, talking to folks that they need to. I think it's important that they talk to my office. This is going to take a little bit of time, and it's unclear whether there's something that will be put on the table that the General Assembly can pass and that I could sign.
And he also talked about how he wants something that's good for taxpayers.
Well, I didn't say that there's not ever the possibility of having a domed stadium in Chicago. I've never said that. I have said, however, that it's not a high priority for the taxpayers, and very importantly, it's got to be a good deal for taxpayers. So there's a lot of questions about whether the deal could get done. I'm very hopeful that they could put something on the table, but you've got to remember that we have a lot of priorities for the state of Illinois. We've been making an awful lot of progress and making capital investments for the state, and nobody's had a new stadium on that list.
So again, we'll see if that issue pops before the end of the month, because as was evident yesterday, things can rapidly change. They took a Department of Children and Family Services bill, gutted it, and put in a bill changing election law saying that if you didn't run anybody in the primary, you can't put anybody on the ballot for November. And also 3 non-binding referendum, one about in vitro fertilization, another about protecting election workers, and another about lowering property taxes. Again, 3 non-binding resolutions on the November ballot. So quickly, things can change at the State House. But a few other notes, go to thecentersquare.com. Check out the headlines. For instance, measure allowing 20 minutes of relaxation in schools ready for final passage. This is a bill that passed the Senate. Now it's up in the House. You've also got legislation that Republicans are looking for that would increase penalties for fleeing police. So go check out that story there with Senate Republicans saying that they want to increase penalties for those who flee police, and also find out the back and forth over proposed prison closures. Just some of the stories that you can go read at thecentersquare.com. Greatly appreciate you guys checking it out each and every weekday morning. I got to get out of here because, well, the State House is back in session, and I got to keep an eye on everything that's going on over there. So we'll see you back here tomorrow with Bishop on Air.